everyone. My name is Rafal, and I would like to welcome everyone to my Headshot Photography podcast. Today, I have a very special guest. Renee Bowen is in the house. Thank you so much for accepting my invitation. I'm truly honored to talk to you, especially you do all sorts of interesting stuff which are connected to photography. And I want to dive into some of those elements and, talk a little bit about those things with you. But before we kind of get into those heavy topics, I just want to talk a little bit. How did you even get into photography in general? Because I know everyone has own journey. Sometimes people, have different careers. They do completely different stuff, and out of the blue, they decide, okay, I want to be a photographer, and they just jump right into it. I was one of those people. So tell me about your story. How did you get into photography? I've read a little bit your bio, so I know some of those things, but I want you to share with the audience, how this whole thing started for you.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me. I'm honored to be here. And yeah, I fell into it, accidentally, I guess you could say. I kind of grew up around it. My dad always dabbled in photography, and he actually worked as a photographer for a long time. So he would like be developing things in the bathroom, I sort of like grew up a little bit around it. But then my parents divorced, and so it's not like I had it around me all the time. And I always felt like I was drawn to the arts. When I first went to college, I didn't really have a whole lot of direction or even like desire for what I really wanted to do with the rest of my life at 18.
Mhm.
But I did enter as an art student, and I was, thought I was going to be either like a graphic designer or, something in fine arts. And then I ended up switching to psychology. So I got a bachelor's in psychology, which is something I absolutely love. And I was very drawn to that. So I ended up doing that with a minor in art,
Mhm.
never thinking like photography, along that way at all. And it wasn't until much later.
Mhm.
I was 25, 26. I moved to LA just on a whim. I'm originally from a very small town in Louisiana
Yes.
and graduated from LSU in Baton Rouge. Moved to Los Angeles, and then I met my husband, who is an actor.
Mhm.
And I've always kind of just dabbled in photography and been sort of good at it. But he started asking me to take headshots. So that was sort of like my throwing myself into the fire with that. And, it was on film because that was the only option back in the day, is before
Mhm.
digital. So I started shooting headshots, and I found that I really, really loved it. And then I had kids, and my oldest son has autism, so he didn't speak until he was almost 5. So
Oh.
I was just constantly like with that 85 in his face, right? Like, what's going on in there? And he was such
Mhm.
a beautiful baby. So I was always taking pictures of him. And then people just started asking me to take pictures of their kids and do their headshots. And so I had to just kind of teach myself along the way. And it wasn't until about 2005 that I really started taking it seriously,
Mhm.
because people were really asking me to do it, and I was having to charge money. And that's when I had to kind of figure out this whole business side of it. So yeah, I'm self-taught basically, in that respect. And I jumped into digital around that time as well.
Mhm.
And so yeah, my story is very similar to a lot of people, I think. We just sort of find
Totally.
it where it finds us.
So tell me what's drawn you into portraits and headshots. Because I know you said the story about like your husband asked you to do his headshots, but I think, and again, this is maybe just my opinion, like there's all sorts of different genres of photography, but
Mhm.
headshots and portraits are kind of specific because you have to have some kind of like, I don't know, you have to create this kind of connections with people, and I know some people have a really hard time to do that. So how this whole thing evolved, let's in your career, that okay, this is what I'm going to focus on, headshots and portraits, this is something what I want to
Yeah.
do. Tell me a little bit, what's the story behind that?
Yeah, no, you're right. I feel like I always tell people that it's a people job, right? Like, it's a portrait work like that, because it is a very vulnerable thing for a lot of people, to be in front of someone's camera for that long. And like I said, I was kind of like, just like everyone else, just shooting a little bit of everything for a while, right?
Mhm.
Just kind of learning and practicing. And I quickly realized that I did not love taking photos of other people's kids as much as I
Okay.
liked taking pictures of my kids. And so I knew pretty early on that I was not going to be specializing in young children or even families. Like,
Mhm.
I liked working one on one with
Mhm.
people. So
Okay.
I think that that was a big aspect of it for me with headshots. And I was a little spoiled, I think, because when I started taking these headshots, it was actors. Actors know how to find their light. They know
Mhm.
how, you know what I mean? Like it
Yeah.
was a little bit of a cheat sheet, right? Because like I didn't have to know that much about posing yet because they were sort of doing some of that work with me. So I think that was actually good because it helped me learn very quickly. And then I started taking headshots of business professionals and people who really don't like having their photos taken. And, that's sort of like a whole different ball game. You do have to know how to connect and fall into rapport very easily and, you know, guide them through that process. But that to me, I loved that sort of even more
Mhm.
because it was, it really is sort of it's really important to get very that instant connection with people, right?
Mhm.
And that's what I love about working one-on-one for headshot clients and branding as well. Now, because I do
Mhm.
that as well now, but I started specializing in high school senior portraits very
Mhm.
early on. That was sort of what really lit me up because when I was in my degree program for psychology, I originally wanted to work with adolescents. So this
Mhm.
was like kind of bridging that for me. I could kind of use a little bit of my psychology because
Mhm.
I'm working with very self-conscious teens, especially now, they're used to having phones pointed at them and it's a very different thing.
World.
Yes. So I really loved that aspect of getting to know people at
Mm.
at a deeper level, especially with my senior portrait photography work, because what I do is I create more of an experience for people. It's not
Mhm.
just like a, hey, I'm going to meet you at the park, take a few pictures and give you a flash drive. We go out for a couple hours. They have hair and makeup. It's a whole like fashion shoot for them basically. And they buy albums and products and archival, artwork. And so for me, I like to go deeper with people.
Mhm.
So I think that's just part of my personality. So I think that's why I love that part of it. Like you said, like the connection piece of it is important to me.
Absolutely. So let's kind of dive a little bit deeper into this. And so, can you tell me, like, because I know we all have to go through this technical kind of portion of getting into this industry, right? Like, we have to get the cameras, learn the lighting, learn the settings, and all this, technicalities. But it seems like in your case, at some point, you started like really implementing psychology into your work. Can we talk a little bit about it? Because I know this is like kind of the next level of photography. And again, I don't want to get into like, what lens we're using or what camera, because like this topic I think is just like burnout already, and then we know what is out there. But I think this is the next level of photography where
Mhm.
you trying to kind of like understand the connection with your subject, understanding them a little bit more, understanding yourself into this whole process. And I'm guessing you having that knowledge from psychology, you could started like really implementing and using that into your advantage. So can we talk about that a little bit? Like
Yeah.
when you, first of all, when you realize like, how important that is, and then, like what is the most important thing you kind of see when it comes to having that connection with your subject during the photo shoot?
Yeah, no, I love that topic in general, and especially as it relates, and we can get into this a little bit too if you want, of this whole AI thing, right? Like, so
Mhm.
that's part of our differentiation here. It's like, no, yeah, everybody can just kind of go out and get their picture made or whatever, or have it constructed for them. But what is going to be that differentiator that people want
Mhm.
to come to you, a person, a human, for that? And I think this is a really big piece of it is that we're human beings. We're made for connection. That's what we're sort of like wired for. And this whole ability to connect with another person from behind our cameras, what really matters is how we can only meet them basically at the level that we are able to meet ourselves. Right. So I really do believe that all of this sort of starts with us. So, yes, you can fake it till you make it and you can kind of like, ride through a lot of different things, but really at the heart of it, true connection and getting, I think, really authentic, real, reactions, looks, twinkle in the eye, whatever it is. It matters how connected we are to ourselves as
Mhm.
well, first, because that is going to basically determine how deep we can go with other people, right?
Mhm.
How open we want to be. And having the ability to connect with people in a way that helps them fall into the session quickly and easily, like just feel super comfortable with you, I think is going to be even more important going forward
Mhm.
in this age of AI for
Mhm.
sure.
Absolutely. So tell me a little bit, let's kind of jump into this whole AI conversation because it seems like this whole new technology is like really turning this entire, not only our industry but like entire world upside down.
Hmm.
It's affecting us on so many levels that I think we don't even understand what kind of the long term is gonna, what kind of long term impact is gonna have on us. I see that like in let's say in my profession, well, in my our profession, that like people are kind of like really lost, confused, don't know what to do with this. It's impacting their mental health too. And then like as we talked before, I noticed that you also specialize in kind of trauma stuff when it comes to humans, and how that's impacting them. Let's talk a little bit about it, like let's start maybe unpacking this whole thing. So what's your just a kind of general take on when it comes to AI, like how this is changing our life, but also how this is impacting also our industry, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of thoughts on AI.
Okay.
I've been
Okay.
talking about it. I've been talking about AI since, well, really since, the day ChatGPT came out, I signed up
Mhm.
for it right away. Honestly, just because I wanted to know
Okay.
what it was about. And I've always just been very sort of like one of those people who I'm an early adopter, right? I want to
Mhm.
kind of like jump in, figure
Understand.
things out and see what it's about. So I've been talking about it like either on my podcast or in my
Mhm.
communities about AI in general for a while. And I believe that there are a lot of really great things that are going to come out of
Mhm.
it, especially like in the medical fields and things like that. But I also think that we are probably headed for some pretty scary times because it's not being
Mhm.
regulated at all. And
Mhm.
so there's this gray area. I feel like we're definitely in the wild west right now of
Mhm.
AI. So I view it differently because yes, I am a coach. I coach photographers and I have certifications in life coaching and different things like that, being trauma informed. I have a different lens, I guess, right? Like when I
Mhm.
look at it through my photographer brain and my coach, and then as a parent and as a human, right? There's all
Mhm.
these different feelings and emotions about AI. And I feel like that is pretty common right now because a lot of us don't really know where this is going because we can't control it, right? We're not in control of this. And no one really kind of seems to be in control of it and nobody seems to want to take control of it. And that's the piece that I think is a little scary. So for me as a photographer, I'm not necessarily worried, quote unquote, about it
Mhm.
taking our jobs. I have been in this industry a long time. I've been a professional photographer for over 20 years. Every time there was a new iPhone that came out, people were freaking out, right? Like, oh my
Mhm.
God, now you can, blur the background, whatever. There's always going to be something or someone or the market saturated or whatever you want to talk about. There's always going to be something that you can choose to be afraid about in terms of
Mhm.
that. For me, as a photographer, I love the challenge, right?
Mhm.
I like, okay, well, how can I continue to double down on this client experience? That's a really big piece of it for me because I've
Mhm.
always been really big about the client experience. And I think that, yeah, if you're out there and you're just sort of taking random photos and you're not creating an experience, you're not connecting with your clients, you're not really kind of developing this other part of your business, then yeah, you might be easily replaced, right?
Mhm.
By another photographer, not even just AI, but like just in general. So I feel like this is a call to us to really uh, hone in, get very connected to our purpose, our why, and our messaging and our voice and what
Mhm.
makes us different and how we're standing out. So I do think we have to be paying attention to it. I'm not saying I think it's awesome. I don't love the fact that it's stealing art from people. That
Mhm.
part's not great.
Mhm.
Um, so there's that piece of it. And then there's this other piece of it that I use. I use ChatGPT for, brainstorming, for, admin, stuff like that. I do
Mhm.
not use it in ways that would be like, never use ChatGPT or AI for a therapist or anything like
Mhm.
that, because it's there's a lot of bias built into it. It's
Mhm.
it's by default, it's meant to be a yes man, right? Like, it's going to tell you
Mhm.
everything that you think about is amazing, and
Yeah.
that is creating psychosis in people
Yeah.
already. So there's that piece of it that's super scary, but I do think that there's a lot of benefit to it if it's used the
Properly.
right way. Yeah,
Mhm.
for sure. So yeah, those are just like the initial like
Okay.
overview thoughts of it.
Thoughts.
But like, where do you, if you want to dig into like
Yeah,
different
let's go
pieces
dig
of
in more. So I want to kind of like talk a little bit more about those image generators, because like I've
yeah,
noticed nowadays people, and and we both know from our experience that people in general, they're scared when it coming for photos, right? Like especially for headshot, there's some hesitations always, like I have to be at the front of the camera, I have to be vulnerable, I have to open up, I have to just work with this photographer. So why don't I just like, throw a few selfies into this image generator and create some kind of headshots? And I know when we coming from, when it comes to the experience, right, like you're just creating not only just the images, it's just the experience for the client. um so what do you think about those like image generators, when it comes to creating your self image, and we know we're living in such a kind of also distorted world where everyone wants to look perfect, everyone wants to look like, special, and those generators, they're getting better and better and better, by default, and monthly we see huge progress. So where this whole thing is going, first of all, this is like, I just want to ask your opinion, but from also I would like to ask you from psychology perspective, how this is affecting people, because I think, and again, like it's just kind of scary that we pushing that perfection, but we don't really see who we truly are, right? Like, as you said, like,
it.
we are disconnected with ourselves, plus we have these tools which can kind of create this fake person who is kind of like us, right? And how this is impacting not only people, but the society in general.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how
Hmm.
this all plays out, even just in the very near future, because I really feel like in the next couple of years, we're going to see some like crazy advances. I mean,
Hmm.
we've already seen how much better and more quote unquote real these images are. Again, it does depend on the prompt, right? Like, so the
Yeah.
prompt
Oh yeah.
is a very important piece of it. So that's kind of where I always tell people, like, even if you are not excited about AI or don't want to use it, like, I really feel like everybody should at least know about it, and they should at
Hmm.
least
That's right.
know what it takes to create those things, because
Mhm.
we just knowledge, just for
Yeah.
the knowledge of it. Um, all that to say, I think that yes, with, filters and um, even just cosmetic procedures, right? Like, I was just talking about this with my husband, who's an actor. When you watch older movies or TV shows, even from the early 2000s, people actually looked different, right? Like, they had different faces. Now, I mean, like, everybody sort of has like the same kind of face, right? They're having the
Yeah.
same injections and they're having the same this or that. And so it was even happening before AI, is my point. And I
Yeah.
think that now it is accelerating at a much greater pace. And I've joined, just as a side note, and I think this is a good idea for people to do, just so you guys know what's out there. I've joined a couple of Facebook groups that are specifically for people who are in this business of like AI photo shoots, because I want to
Hmm.
know what they're doing. I want to
Okay.
know what they're creating. I want to know how they're creating it. And let me tell you, they are scary. Like, these images that they're creating, like, there are people out there already who are doing full on AI photo shoots for people, charging a decent amount of money for it and sitting at their computer and creating all of it. And they
Mhm.
look really, really good. And they're going to look even better,
Yes.
in the next few months. So I just want to know, what's going on there so I can see literally what my competition is at this point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's always going to be a market for stuff like that, though, when it
Mm-hmm.
comes down to it. There's always going to be people who want to do the cheapest, the fastest, the easiest to make me look the most perfect, right? Those to me, those are not my clients. And
Mm-hmm.
this comes to that sort of conversation about like how well do you know your client as a
Mm-hmm.
photographer? Who are you working with and for, and who do you want to work with? And getting really clear about it, but also like doubling down in that on, in your marketing and everything, because those people who want that sort of service, they're not going to be coming to somebody like me, right? They're not going to want to spend more money, get in front of the camera, right? Like that's a different client. So
Mm-hmm.
how are we talking to them? How are we marketing ourselves? And so that's like a different business conversation in
Mm-hmm.
the way that I see it. Um, and at the end of the day, we can choose to be afraid or we can choose to be proactive, just about
Mm-hmm.
anything. And I'm
Absolutely.
just choosing not to be afraid.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean I don't know what's out there. Doesn't mean I'm blind. It means, okay, I'm focusing on this instead,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
So tell me how we can navigate, because like it seems for me that everything is changing so rapidly. The changes are so quick that even the last year, if we look at the 2025, the whole year, like it's just insane how much everything progressed. So how photographers can navigate, through that changes, how they can adopt, because as we know, like sometimes takes time, right? Like we need to understand something, we need to kind of have kind of clear view, what are we doing, which direction. But right now, like I don't know how you feel about it, but it seems like sometimes we're just pulling so many different strings to make
Mhm.
this work, and then we don't even know if it is going to work or not, right? It's just all guessing at some point.
Yeah.
So what would be your advice from your kind of like perspective as a business owner, someone who's been in this industry for many many years? What photographers should focus on, and then what would be their direction, or at least the path, right? Like which direction we should go. What would be your opinion on that?
I feel like it's going to be more important than ever to be really really clear and connected to your sense of purpose, truly.
Hmm.
Like, and anytime anybody comes, and it sounds really simple, but like it's a pretty deep and complex topic. People
Hmm.
come into my coaching all the time, whether they're just starting photography or they've been in business for 20 years and they need help with specific things. Always start at that place, because I'm like, how
Hmm.
well do you know what you're about? And I'm not talking about what you do
Hmm.
at all. I'm not talking about the actual photos you take. We start more of like, okay, what is my actual true deeper sense of purpose as a human? Like, if
Hmm.
how do I operate? What's my legacy? How do I want to, leave this place, right? Because I really believe that yes, we can have goals, we can, all of that is super important, but what really matters is like who we're becoming along the way, and how we treat people and how we create these experiences. So I suggest starting there, like starting at the beginning. Like, yes, you're running a business, but like why are you doing this? What
Hmm.
is the deeper meaning to this? And I'm not talking about because I have to make a living, right? That's
Hmm.
everybody has to make a living. That's just the world we live in. So why is it important for you to, do what you do? There's deeper meanings to this. And so I go very, very deep with this with my coaching students. That's also what led me to trauma work, because it has a lot to do with where we've been, right? We're
Hmm.
all programmed. That's just the
Yes.
way our brains work. It's just neuroscience. Up until about the age of 7, we were in, a very magical theta brain state where we were designed to soak in information around us so that we could learn. Unfortunately, a lot of us sucked in a lot of stuff that wasn't great. And
Hmm.
so, our brains are just looking for patterns. And so now, if you haven't done any of that sort of like deeper introspective work, it's going to start to play out in other ways as an
Hmm.
adult. And it's going to start to play out in all kind of different ways. And so I think it's really important to go back and look at that information, decide what you consciously want to continue taking with you into this future version of
Hmm.
yourself, and what no longer serves you, basically. And
Absolutely.
doing that inner work is super super important. And then from there, because I think all your marketing actually really comes from this place, right? Like how
Hmm.
connected you are to that. that's what makes you the most you that you can be. And so you've been doing it, you've been living it already. It's about taking out that highlighter and like really being intentional about, okay, this is the golden thread of everything that I do and
Mm-hmm.
of everything I'm about. And then from there, target client work. Okay, who do I want to work with? You're not going to want to shoot every single person in your town. That's not possible, right? Like I know we get in this mindset like that as photographers and creatives in general, but you physically can't do that. Even if you have a team of people, right? Who are your people? How can you call them out? How can you be resonant to that? And that is a big piece of why you have to know yourself first.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I think we have to double down on this part of it, this really like foundational piece. Then from there you can create whatever version of that business you want to create, but it starts there, really.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of photographers and creatives in general are also a little afraid of doing any sort of repelling marketing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's marketing. Like, yes, you want to attract the right people, but you also want to repel the people who are not for you. You don't want to waste their time or yours. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what's also going to help you find your people faster. So understanding how to weave that messaging into your copy and into your, whatever kind of marketing you're doing.
Mm-hmm. So tell me how we can differentiate ourselves from, because like I want to ask you like a very specific questions, because we're living in the world where, at least the way I feel it, everyone tried to sell you something, right? Like
Yeah.
wherever you go, and social media got so saturated with that like it's becoming just this sales place for everybody, right? And everyone tried to like use all sorts of different tricks and like kind of manipulations and visual effects and all this stuff, just to kind of get someone hooked on the something you're trying to sell. And I've kind of feel it for the last year or so, where this is like really pushed. We cannot. It's becoming really hard, in my opinion, as a photographer, to just kind of express yourself. And this is what you say: you're finding yourself, you're finding your clientele, you're finding what you're going after, but you still have to implement that sales kind of element into it.
Mhm.
So how we can, I don't know, like, what would be your advice for photographers who, like, they still want to kind of keep their identity, they want to still keep their style, they still want to kind of pursue what they're going after, but at the same time, kind of keep it balanced between what we are kind of, who we are, and this whole marketing and sales machine, which we have to kind of jump in and push what we do to the world. I hope
Yeah,
that
no, I
makes
mean
sense.
that's
Yeah.
I think so. I think yeah, yeah, you can let me know, you can clarify if as we kind of dig into it. But I feel like this has been a conversation that's been pretty top of mind for photographers for a while even,
Okay.
right? Like because I see so many people on the daily, whether it's in my DMs or just in my communities or whatever, who, they wanted to be a photographer, not a salesperson, not
Mhm.
a marketer, not
Yes.
a social media manager, not this, not a content creator. Okay. Um, and I totally get it, right? Like most of us were not drawn to this career because we wanted to do all of these other things and have to like constantly be on camera and marketing ourselves. Like
Mhm.
that's not comfortable for most of us.
Mhm.
Unfortunately for us,
Yeah.
I feel like, you know, I'm not saying you have to be on social media. There are people running really amazing businesses completely off of social, but the marketing still has to be there in some way, right?
Mhm.
So for me, I always tell people if you are a photographer who is out there charging money for a service, you are in sales.
Yeah.
So that is just
There's
a
no way
fact.
around it. Yeah.
There is no way around it. We have just been programmed, most of us, especially those of us who are a little bit older, right? Like we've been
Mhm.
programmed that sales is slimy, it's gross, that whatever, right? There's all of
Mhm.
these like thoughts and feelings that people have about sales. Well, what's true for you, right? I mean,
Mhm.
like at the end of the day, most of those are not even your stories. There's stories you heard from your parents, your caregivers, whatever, but what's
Mhm.
actually true for you? When I had to finally like increase my pricing to be profitable and I had to really look at this business side of photography and realize, oh yeah, this is just a really expensive hobby unless I am actually making charging what I'm supposed to be charging. it was extremely triggering for me. Like
Mhm.
I did not feel comfortable with that. I wanted to throw up before I told people what the price was going to be, right? Like I got very, 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 very like physically nervous and anxious about all of that. And I find that this is a very common thing for most creatives because as a creative, that's not how we're designed, right? Like we're here to create and make art and take pretty pictures and connect with people. We don't want to talk about money, but I think this is a really important conversation and we have to, first of all, because you are in sales. If you're running a business,
Mhm.
you're in sales and you have to figure it out, but you can make it look however you want it to look. And again, I go back to how connected are you to yourself and are you willing to follow those triggers? Because for me, those money triggers led me back to my childhood. And I had to look at some pretty, you know, uh, they weren't comfortable things to look at on
Mhm.
why I had these thoughts about money and sales.
Mhm.
And once I was willing to do that, then I could decide if I wanted to continue feeling that way or not. And now sales is like my favorite thing because I don't view it in the same way. I'm not selling something that's like I don't believe in, first of all, right? How deeply do you believe in the service that you've created and in your art? And a lot of it has to do with the fact that as artists, we are constantly being um in a microscope, right? Like we're constantly
Mhm.
feeling like everyone is looking at it and judging us, right? And so we want everyone to like it. Well, not everybody is going to like it. That's the first part.
Mhm.
But do you like it? Like do you feel confident in it? Do you feel like, yeah, I, I'm worth it? How worthy do you feel as a human? So all of that is tied to each other because every time we
Mhm.
start talking about money, it's always going to be tied to that worthiness. That's just how we frame it in our minds as humans. That's just the way our brains work. So how deep have you gone with that, first of all?
Mhm.
And how willing are you to change that conversation if it's something
Mhm.
that's not ideal for you anymore? Framing it as service is we hear that all the time. Is like you're not just charging people money for a random thing. You're creating an amazing experience for these
Yeah.
people, and money is just an energy exchange for that. That's really all it is at the end of the day. Money is doesn't have any thing attached to it until we give it that meaning and feeling. So that's a really big piece of it. But I
Mhm.
feel like we have to do the inner work on it. And if
Mhm.
you're willing to do the inner work on it, you can get to this other piece of it, another side of it, and you can decide how you want it to look. Now, talking about the marketing side of it and like having to be a content creator and pull people off of the algorithm and stop them in their scroll and all this stuff, that can feel super super overwhelming for most of us.
Mhm.
So that's going to look a little different depending on where you are in your business. I always tell my coaching students, like, it's not just one thing that we have to be worried about, right? Or thinking about. I feel like the base of it, like, no matter what kind of business, photography business you're running. Now, I am a portrait photographer and I coach portrait photographers, but any photographer really, your SEO is super important. Like, I
Mhm.
know we've probably talked about that a lot, but like, it's more important now going into this AI era than ever
Mhm.
because you want AI to find you as well. So your SEO has to be really strong and you have to have a good sense of what that is, not just on your website. Because once you have this SEO strategy that you can use on your website, that same strategy you can use on social so that you're not
Mhm.
recreating the wheel constantly. You're doing it from a very cohesive place. And then if you are a higher end luxury portrait photographer like myself, that word of mouth and your local marketing is really big. But
Mhm.
those things can all feel connected to each other, and that's really where most creatives sort of, I feel like they get it feels chaotic when you have to like do all these things. But if you
Mhm.
start simple and you start with your blog, like you start with like let's say a blog post and you have an SEO strategy there. Okay, well then
Mhm.
you're just going to take that and it's going to follow to social and it's going to follow to any sort of like local marketing that you do as well. It's one cohesive thing instead of
Mhm.
all of this stuff. And it's important to tune out the noise, right? Again, who are you marketing to? That's a
Mhm.
really big piece.
So, based on your experience coaching photographers, what is, in your opinion, one of the biggest struggle they're fighting with? Like, the common problem which kind of occurs over and over and over again when you see in maybe not each individual, but for like, you can see the pattern that there is some kind of big issue there which they're struggling the most. What would that would be in your opinion?
Probably a couple of different things. I mean, what we were just talking about is a really, really big one
Okay.
as far as having to constantly be showing up
Hmm.
as, a marketer, basically, like marketing themselves, visibility, being comfortable talking on camera,
Hmm.
all that stuff, right? Because that right there, just as a side note, is going to be a really big, we need to be doing that more. We
Hmm.
need to be showing up on our stories. If social marketing is a piece of your strategy, showing people who you really are, like as a human being, how you speak, how you work, that's going to be really, really important moving into this like AI age. I
Hmm.
really do believe that. So even if you're not on social a lot, being willing to have videos up on your website so people can have that contact with you, I think is a really big piece of it. So I think that for me, I see a lot of that. I see a lot of people struggling with visibility, showing up and being stretched too thin because most of us are like solopreneurs, right? We're trying
Hmm.
to wear all these hats. So that's the other piece of it is like, okay, when do you delegate and how, right?
Hmm.
There comes a time in every business, like you can only get so far on your
Yeah.
own. And that's a very big piece of it is like, okay, well, this piece of it, it's gotten away from me and I don't have the capacity to do that and grow my business, do the things that I'm actually really good at. So I need to hire someone or implement some sort of strategy or both that is
Hmm.
going to do that piece for me. So like that's a very big reason where a lot of people do come into my coaching. And then the other one is the pricing and the money.
Hmm.
100%. Like those two things I think are fairly universal. Right? I saw an Instagram not long ago of this photographer doing it was supposed to be a funny reel and she was talking about how every time she has to send an invoice, like she feels guilty about it. And I'm like, okay,
Hmm.
you gotta fix that. Like I know it's supposed to be funny, but like you gotta fix that. So I see that a lot.
Yeah. You know what? And I not only agree with you, but I think a lot of photographers going through that process. And, for me, it was exactly the same story. And I don't know, like maybe I'm coming from, I came from Poland to Canada. And, the just the general myth about the money was completely different over there, where you're coming here and you have to completely rewire yourself how you think about the money, because the money was always the evil thing. People always argue about it. People always like have this bad stigma. And then, like you have to charge people, and like you just feel guilty even for something which you shouldn't be guilty, right? You've done the service,
Yeah.
you provide something, you give the product, you give the experience, and then at the end of the day you're sending the invoice and you just like, oh well, I don't know, maybe I should just like, give them some discount or something that, just make
Yep.
them show them that, like I don't want to charge them that much. So I think, and when I talk to like my audience, the same thing. Like I've been hearing that keeping that kind of balance between the business and the creative part sometimes it doesn't go kind of together, right? Like it's just two
Yeah.
separate things, and then a lot of people cannot somehow connect those two and make this work together, right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely. It's a big, big, big piece of it. But I really believe that if you were drawn to this work for any reason,
yeah,
I believe that there's a reason why, right? Like
yeah.
and it's bigger than just, oh, I want to create art, but it does come with all of this other stuff.
Hmm.
And so I like to view it as a really great opportunity to work through
Hmm.
all of this stuff because if you're triggered about something, there's a reason. And
Yes.
you always have a choice. You can look at it or you can choose to push it
Mhm.
away.
Yeah.
But I highly recommend looking at it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's not only that, but I also think you have to just work on yourself, right? Because
That's what
that's
I mean.
another,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
You have to change
100%.
the habits, the way you think. And this, unfortunately, sometimes takes not only time, but like really hard work, right?
It
So,
does.
absolutely.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's switch the gears and let's talk about something different. Can you tell me a little bit more about your creative process when it comes to creating your portraitures and headshots? Because you have very significant style, and I know those things kind of like also takes time to get there. So can you tell me about your process of creating your portraiture? Because this is another thing and another element where I been hearing from so many photographers how I can create my own style of photography, right?
Hmm.
Because you now
Yeah.
you just kind of pulling some different things from different photographers, but at some point you have to create your own style of what you're doing
Yeah.
and what you like and what your clients admire, right? So what was your process when it comes to creating your own style of shooting headshots and portraiture?
Yeah. It's hard, right? I mean, like we
Yeah.
are, especially now, even back in the day when I was just starting, it was hard. But now it's like we have so much content and so many photographers and so many
Mhm,
images that we can draw inspiration from. And so it is really hard to discern what is really my style or what am I
mhm,
trying to emulate. And, but I feel like as an artist, just in general, I think, like I said, we want to please, right?
mhm,
Like, especially some of us have more people pleasing than others built into us. But
mhm,
I feel like, you're making something and you want people to say, oh, that's really good. Right. So
mhm,
there's that piece of it, that element of wanting that validation. But for me, when I was going through this process and, you know, it was film. There really wasn't like a
yeah.
whole lot of digital media that I could look at. I had magazines, I had, famous photographers that I could look at really, but this was like the early days. This was like really even before YouTube and any
Mhm,
of that stuff where we didn't really have so much of an onslaught. But I did have a handful of photographers that I thought were amazing and I really loved their
mhm,
style. For me, finding my own style had a lot to do, I think, with the fact that I was a film shooter.
mhm,
Um, I feel like my images now still have a little bit of that film vibe. Like
mhm,
I want them to anyway, in a high end way. You know what I mean? But and not just like a filter, right? Because that
mhm,
is sort of like a popular thing now. But I've always sort of had that as far as like the tones and the way it looks, the
mhm,
profile, the color profile. But the way that I work, not necessarily as much with headshots, because that's a pretty specific
mhm,
thing and we're so tight for those. But for my portrait work, especially with my seniors and my branding as well, I use a lot of movement and I always have. Like
mhm,
I feel like that is always just been it's maybe my personality. Like I like to use a lot of like I like to kind of move and flow and stay in that place and not be stagnant. It also helps people get out of their heads. So if
mhm,
I've got a very self-conscious teenager who's very shy or whatever, I am very big on getting them to move, but I let them know, right? Like that's one of the
mhm,
things that I talk about as far as like the experience. I give them a lot of prep, right, before they ever
mhm,
kind of show up for this session. I let them know what's gonna happen, how it's gonna happen, what to expect, like, put them at ease as much as possible,
mhm,
One of the things I always tell my clients is, like, "Nothing you do is wrong." Like, my job is to direct you, and so I do see myself more as a director than anything else because I'm
mhm,
constantly talking while I'm shooting, and yeah, I'm a very proud overshooter, and I am never, ever, ever gonna change. I
mhm,
was an overshooter on film, but that had obviously, I've refined it over the years,
yeah.
and I'm very fast at culling and editing because that's the other side of it. You gotta be fast at those things if you're gonna be an overshooter. But I know what I'm looking for. I know,
Mhm,
like, kinda like the pocket that it's more of like a feeling, it's sort of intuitive, I think, when you kinda get people to fall into a pocket. So as far as, like, finding my style, that was a big piece of it, is
mhm,
how do I like to shoot, right? Like what kind of energy do I want to have? Like some people are completely opposite. They're much more like controlled and enjoy very intentional posing.
mhm,
That's not me.
yeah.
You have to get clear about that with yourself first, right? Like
Mhm,
again, going back to like what are you about? What do you want your art to look like, and how do you want people to feel when they see it? And how do you work well? Like, do you like to use movement? Are you constantly moving? Or are you more of like a calm, inner calm person? That's going to
Mm,
matter. And then the other side of it is the editing, like we were talking about before, is like
mhm,
finding your your style and your color, all of those tones that matter. Because yes, you want people to be able to identify your work.
mhm,
You want that. You want to have that consistency. I think that's really important. Not to say we shouldn't be challenging ourselves and experimenting. I think that's always a big
mhm,
piece of it. And a big reason why people get in ruts is because they don't play enough, right? So yeah, every now and then play. But what is your calling card, and creating it and really feeling good about it. That's a big piece of it.
mhm. Absolutely. So I want to dive because you kind of answer that question a little bit, but I want to go a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
Um, I want to talk a little bit more about connecting with your subject. Because when you told me like, oh, you push a lot of movement, this is something which the style of the way you're shooting looks like. But the reason I'm going to ask about it is because like we all different, right? As a photographers, we all have different personalities. Some of us are introverts, some there's like extroverts, someone which they have this very specific personality, they outgoing, and like they just like vibrating, right? And people much easier connecting with them. And I know everyone has to find own way of connecting with your subject, because it's like, as you said, and I 100% agree with you, like you have to have that connection in order to create something meaningful. So can you tell me about, like, what's your way of connecting with your subject, and especially if you work with seniors, you work with actors, like we have to just right away get that connection on the shoot, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes we notice people before, sometimes we don't, but our job is to get that connection like right on the spot, because if we're not gonna get that, the session might be a little bit more challenging. So can you
hmm
tell me what's your ways to not only deeply connect with your subject, but like the easiest way to find this kind of common language and some kind of specific connection so you can, proceed with your photo shoot?
Yeah. It's interesting because, I'm certified in NLP, which is neuro linguistic programming. And the thing I'm
Mhm.
about to tell you is very much that is an NLP tactic, but I was doing it way before that. And so
Okay.
when I started learning about it, I was like, oh, that's interesting. I already started doing that. And I think that I think a lot of photographers instinctively do this, or we
Hmm.
want to. It's basically a mirror, right? Like it's never about me. When I first, because a lot of times with headshots, especially, I've never met this person. They walk into my studio. That's the first time I've ever seen them and met them. Yes, I've probably had a little bit of correspondence with them when we're booking, but face to face, I don't know who they are. And so I don't know a lot of times what was who's going to walk in that door, right?
Hmm.
Especially with because I do a lot of like business headshots
Hmm.
now, and so I don't really know. And like it's never really about, like I said, it's not about me at that moment and my personality. Like they
Hmm.
obviously know that you know they trust me enough to sign up for a photo shoot.
Hmm.
Um, it's a mirror. Immediately when someone comes in, I'm observing them. And
Hmm.
I do this instinctively and just unconsciously, and a lot of people do, but you can teach yourself how to do this if you don't
Hmm.
do this instinctively. You know, are they talking loud? Do they have a loud voice? Are they very quiet? Mirror it immediately. So if
Hmm.
someone comes in, hi, nice to meet you. What is their tone of voice? What is their body language? Mirror it, right? Like literally small little movements. Like if they're going to come in, you're going to offer them a seat, offer them something to drink or whatever. If they cross their legs, you can cross your legs. Kind of just mirroring them. People don't realize you're doing it. It's not
Hmm.
obvious if you just sort of like do it, you know, um, sort of passively. A
Hmm.
lot of it has to do with tone of voice. So ask them questions. How are you going to be using these images today? What is your, what are you excited about for today? Like, are you excited about this? Have you been putting this off? Like, tell me a little bit how you feel about today's session. Like, I want them to talk more than me. That's the
Hmm.
thing. Okay. And that is sort of like the rule of everything, right? Like, so
Hmm.
you want to be observing their body language, these little cues, the tone of their voice, And then you can step in with any sort of guidance and prep or anything like that that you want to talk about. But you're going to mirror a little bit of what they're doing, because what that does is it hits their unconscious brain. This is all at the unconscious level. Like that, no one knows this is happening consciously, but it tells their unconscious brain that they're safe. Because at
Mhm.
the end of the day, our unconscious mind only wants to keep us safe and alive. That's it. So
Yeah.
anything that's seen as unsafe, which could be a photo shoot for people because they don't want to get this done. Like 9 out of 10 of my headshot clients come to me, do not want to get this done. They had a new promotion, or
100%.
they, you know the deal. And so
Yeah.
they're like, I don't want to do this. Okay, I got it. We're going to make this as quick and painless as possible, first of all, but that is a very big piece of it. So, learning to listen, to be a good listener.
Mhm.
And I'm an introvert. Like, people are often kind of shocked by that because I'm always on social media and, I'm kind of out there and I
Mhm.
speak and I'll do it. At the end of the day, I'm a super big introvert. Like, I need to like have my alone time to recharge. I can extrovert when I need to and when I
Mhm.
want to, but I believe that a lot of photographers are probably introverts, right? Because we
Yeah.
like being behind a camera. It
Yes. I
feels
like to
safe.
hide there, right?
Exactly. And so, a lot of this is just about telling your client's unconscious mind that they're safe with you. And that's really the most important piece. If they feel safe with you can get some really great results.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And then I see that a lot of photographers, they introverts, but they have to sometimes we have to just learn this stuff, right? And just
Yeah.
kind of open up. But like my background was just also kind of interesting. Before I started shooting headshots, I used to shoot weddings. And I was
Hmm.
always this kind of like hiding behind everybody and just taking my photos. And then I kind of start transitioning into headshots. That was like the biggest challenge, because now you're just like face to face and you have to talk to these people, you have to work with them, you have to navigate this whole, you're the conductor of this entire shoot. So yeah, it's a little bit of skills you have to learn over the time to
Hmm.
kind of like create that connection. Okay, so I have one more question for you. We're kind of getting close to an hour. What would be your advice to someone who would like to get into that industry, someone who would like to become portrait or headshot photographer, especially in those days where this whole industry is transforming, right? Like the impact of AI and then all this stuff, what is happening, definitely like putting a lot of people on hold. But what would be your advice to these people who would like to get into that creative world, to that creative industry, from someone who has over 20 years of experience being a photographer? What would you tell them?
I would tell them that it's a great industry and that it's you can absolutely create an amazing life and
Hmm.
business doing this, like very profitable. Um, I- and and it is going to challenge you and stretch you in ways you probably have no concept of yet. And so be ready for those triggers. But as if you're drawn to it, right? There's a reason
Hmm.
why. And so I would encourage you to lean in. I also would encourage you to get very clear from the get go on
Hmm.
those foundational things that I was talking about. Who are you? What are you about? Double down on that. That's going to be so important moving into the next like 10, 20 years. And it's going to be those people who are unapologetic about it that are going to be able to stand out. Obviously, you got to be good at what you do, right? We tend to like, I don't want to gloss over that. If, you know, you have to practice, you have to practice and practice a
Hmm.
lot and hone your style and get really specific about it and be good at what you do so that when you are charging premium prices,
Hmm.
you feel good about it, right? So I would say practice a lot, be ready for the internal growth that is going to happen from it, be open to it, and understand that this is a business. Otherwise, like I said, it's a very expensive hobby. So
Hmm.
learn the business as well.
Hmm. So, what would be your business advice? Like, I know the personal growth and,
Yeah.
learning all this photography skills is a one important element. but what would be your kind of business advice, like especially for someone who doesn't have that experience, and like they feel that they have this creative soul, creative mind, but they want to turn it into the business? What would be like one of those big advices when it comes to running a business?
Well, I mean, just in general, uh, there's a lot out there, right?
Hmm.
So we know that the easiest way, the fastest way to kind of get what you want is to first identify what it is you want and then find someone who's done it well and study with them. So like that is a shortcut. Do not skip out on your education, your business education. And you don't have to do it by yourself anymore. Like
Hmm.
you definitely can. There's a lot of free education out there. But as soon as you can invest in something, do that because that is going to propel you into a completely different level. Um, but in general, you have to identify what kind of business you want to run. Do you want to be high volume? Do you want to be low volume, higher end, right? Do you want to
Hmm.
be more of a boutique studio like me? Whatever it is, like you have to identify, like, okay, for me, I started this business when my kids were little.
Hmm.
And my older son has autism, and then I had twins 2 years later. So I had three kids under the age of two. I had a lot going on. I'm married to an actor and a writer. My life was pretty unpredictable. I needed to work, right? I had skin in the game. It wasn't like I could just do this for fun and see if it worked out, right? I had to like go, oh, okay, like I actually have to make
Make this
money
work.
at
Yeah.
this. So for me, I wanted to be home with my kids as much as I could. My kid had a lot of therapy, all these different things. So I didn't want to be high volume. I didn't want to be shooting all day long. I
Hmm.
wanted to work with fewer clients and charge more of a premium price for that. Right. So that's what it looks like for me in my portrait business, whether it's seniors and branding, like it's, 3,000 for $10,000 clients. That's a whole different ball game than like $200 a shoot and then you're done, right? So get clear on that. Even if you can't charge those prices right out the gate because you don't have the skill set yet, have something that you're going to work toward. Like have that idea of like, what do I want this business to like feel like and look like in my life, and how that's going to work for me in my life. And then start building from there. That's like the big piece of it is,
Mhm.
if you are going to be a more premium photographer, let's say, and sell product, that's a very different thing than just, like I said,
Yeah.
shooting and burning. So yeah.
And if you ever get stuck, you have coaching program which you're helping photographers. They can
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a
connect
lot of
to
us
you.
out there,
Yeah.
like find somebody that you vibe with. That's really important. I
Yes.
hear a lot of horror stories from people
Mhm.
coming into either like on calls with me or people who sign up for coaching who have literally have trauma from being in a coaching container with somebody.
Yeah.
Like that makes me
Oh wow.
so sad because artists, we're very we're emotional
Yeah.
people, right? Like
Yeah.
we're wired to be sensitive. And so
Mhm.
if someone is in a coaching container and they're like judging you and hard on you, like that's not going to help you, right? Yes,
Yeah.
a coach should challenge you and should keep you on track, but you should never be made to feel less than in any situation. So if that's
Absolutely.
you, definitely get out of that. But find someone you vibe with, and that's the really big important piece. And again, make sure that person has done or can teach you what you want to learn. That's the other piece of it. So yes, I have coaching programs and I have courses and
Yeah. I will
things like
link all this stuff so people can look at it and then connect with you. Yeah, I've been listening to, as I said, your podcast and then
that.
your content. It's pretty amazing. So, well, thank you for sharing all this information too. I truly want to say big thank you for discussing all these important things with me. I truly appreciate it, and I'm sure the audience who's going to listen to this, they will get some valuable information which is going to help them for sure.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I want to kind of suggest that maybe in the next few months we will jump on it again and we'll do part two. That was truly a pleasure talking to you,
Sure.
and I know this whole thing is just like unfolding at the front of our eyes what's happening right now, and then just
Yeah.
like a lot of stuff going on which is sometimes difficult to absorb even, right? Because there's like
It
whatever you
is.
turn your head, there's something going on, right? So
True. Stay regulated.
absolutely. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.